you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hey folks, it's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, there are things that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. For over 16 years and 2,300 episodes, we bring in the Chris Voss Show, and we just keep bringing you more. 10 to 15 new shows a week, and there's just so much stuff there. We call ourselves the Netflix of podcasting because you can binge anything you want. You want to binge politics? There's plenty of books on that. There's congressmen, there's governors. If you want to binge, White House presidential advisors, Pulitzer Prize winners, romance novelists, just plain novelists, they're all on the show. So you can find everything and anything, as it were. Today we have another exciting book that we're going to be covering, an author. We have Brendan Barca on the show with us today. His newest book is coming out in May of 2025. It is called The Daily Buddhist, 366 Days of Wisdom for Happiness, Inner Freedom, and Mindful Living. Those of you who want a book about wisdom for unhappiness, no freedom, and mindless living, sorry to let you down. This book is not for you. But this book is The Daily Buddhist, and we're going to get into it and talk about it and all that good stuff on the show. In the meantime, go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss on the TikToky, and chrisvossfacebook.com. Brendan is an author, keynote speaker, entrepreneur, and Buddhist practitioner. I hope so. He wrote a book about it. He discovered Buddhism in his 20s, initially turning into meditation to cope with stress and burnout. Since then, he's practiced Tibetan Buddhism for years, traveling to Nepal to learn from revered masters. And I can't produce the names of the masters he learned from, but we'll just take his word for it for now. Experiencing the transformative effects of mindfulness, meditation, and Buddhist teachings in his own life, he founded Pema Solutions. Did I pronounce that right, Brendan?
Yeah, it's a combination of my wife's name and mine. Her name is Pema, so we combined it for Brendan and Pema.
And she is the co-author to the book as well.
Yeah, that's correct.
They bring these invaluable principles to corporations worldwide, and they wrote their first book together we'll be talking about today. Welcome to the show, Brendan. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Chris.
Thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. And it looks like we're going to figure out how to make our lives better today. So give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find you on those social internet stuff?
Yeah, thanks so much. So the first place to find us is going to be at thedailybuddhist.net. That's where you can learn everything about the book and also about our business and our story. And then you can also find us on Instagram. That's at daily.buddhist. And we're growing on there for the last 6 months. And then we're on LinkedIn. I'm at Brendan Barca on LinkedIn.
I always read it as Buddhist, and I figured those are people that were doing lots of marijuana. Buddhist, get it? No. I'm just doing stupid jokes in the show, people. Don't write me.
It's okay. It's so getting settled in.
The daily... Some things you have to waste, even though the joke sucks. It's funnier when you kill and die than when you... It's funnier to die than kill. Anyway, The Daily Buddhist. So give us a 30,000 overview. What's inside your new book?
Yeah, so The Daily Buddhist, as the title mentions, every single day of the year, including one day on leap years, you get a piece of Buddhist wisdom. So we've extracted some of the best quotes and some of the best teachings from over 2,500 years of Buddhism, put them at the top of each page, and then underneath it, we give a commentary or a practice or an action that is modern, that is made for 21st century living. In each month, we cover different themes. We talk about themes in Buddhism such as impermanence, compassion, interdependence, meditation, of course, and so help readers be able to work through it in a methodical way so that by the end of the year, they come out feeling with that inner freedom, the happiness, and mindful living, as the book mentions.
Get wisdom, happiness, and inner freedom, the mindfulness of sitting with your own thoughts and dealing with them, all that good stuff. What is Buddhism? Let's lay a foundation for that. So if I'm not familiar with what Buddhism is how would you describe it?
At its core, Buddhism started from one individual, the Buddha. He was around ancient India about 2,500 years ago, and his own journey. He started out as a prince, living a really privileged life, but found that he was still experiencing suffering, and so he wanted to figure out how he could try to find happiness. And so he actually went off for a while and became a wandering ascetic. He was, trying to practice with limiting his. He wasn't eating much, was just praying all the time, meditating, but found he couldn't find happiness there either. So What actually worked was more of what he called the middle way, which was a space in between that. And so really what Buddhism is, it's helping people to first realize that the suffering is a part of life, but then also realize that there's a path out. So Buddhism and what the Buddha outlined back then is, although there is suffering, we all die, we all get sick, we all experiencing all types of suffering, there are ways to get out and feel happy now. And so that's what Buddhism is, at a 30,000 foot view.
Wait, you mean we all die? What?
Unfortunately, I don't know.
No one told me about this part. No, I'm just kidding. Unfortunately, I'm too aware of it. But no, I mean, there's an old adage of Marcus Aurelius's thing, death smiles upon us, the best we can do is smile back, or something to that effect. Yeah, there's struggle in life. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be, things that we have to overcome. Some of it seems to make us grow. It's kind of weird how sometimes the things that happen to us are the things that need to make us grow the most, it seems, when we're in our moments of dichotomy and we're going through cathartic experiences and stuff. It seems like that's what we need the most. It's kind of like every person has stuff fall into their life that has the ability to either, destroy them or grow them. And it just depends on how we react to them, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of things in Buddhism too reflects around how to be more mentally resilient, how to work on your mind and see situations, no matter how dire they may seem or how difficult things are externally, trying to find ways to, internalize your power and be able to, find a way to get out of it, or find a way to, a better place in life. I think that might be in line with what you're saying.
And maybe perspective is a way of looking at Buddhism. Helps give you a different angle or perspective, or maybe a thoughtful sort of approach to it, instead of, fight or flight panic, which is how some people deal with all their problems, right?
Yeah, in Buddhism, we're always trying to understand our internal and external reality a little bit clearer, because in a given day, right, we have all these thoughts that are ping-ponging around our head. We have all these things coming at us on social media or on the internet. And so there's a lot of room for external and internal distraction, whether it's our thoughts or whether it's things outside, but it's trying to, use mindfulness, use meditation as a way to see things a little bit more clearly and kind of see, okay, I might have maybe, for example, been angry at my partner or something, but trying to see, okay, that doesn't mean that I'm a bad person, doesn't mean that I'm angry. It means that I had that emotion and there might be a better way to work on it in the future. So that's just like one small anecdote, but I do think, as you mentioned, it's a different perspective on how you see things that might help you to live better and, be a better person.
The other thing is the calming of the mind, I think, right? Where, we're shot up with all these scattered thoughts. We have this ego mind that's kind of abusive sometimes, and there's a lot of noise, of course, in our worlds. You got social media, you got ping pong notifications from your phone every 5 seconds. And, I had somebody on recently, a couple months ago, and they talked about spending less time looking for distraction. And a lot of times as human beings, what we're doing is we're trying to distract ourselves from maybe our life, or maybe thinking about our life, or focusing on the issues maybe we need to focus on. And we look for ways to distract us from the reality of what's going on. And sometimes that isn't always good, because we're just filling our world with noise and cheap dopamine hits, right? And so he talked about how we need to spend more time just quiet and alone with our thoughts, and sit and go, what the hell are we thinking? Why are we thinking that?
There's actually this
Buddhism is about, maybe.
Yeah, it actually got me thinking about one of the words in Tibetan for Buddhism, or the word for meditation, is this word gom, which actually translates to getting to know yourself, or being able to understand yourself better. So in a Buddhist perspective, when you sit down with your thoughts and you're able to meditate, it enables you to be able to see who you are and be able to see those thoughts, see those distractions. If we don't do that, if we just kind of keep ourselves on the treadmill of those dopamine hits, see ourselves, every day just like racing one thought after the next and one activity after the next, we never actually get the chance to get to know ourselves, never mind make friends with ourselves, which is also part of the reason why there's a lot of, self-loathing or self-hatred out there. It's because we don't actually take the time to, create kindness or space for ourselves. So I think that's a big part of what meditation is, and especially from a Tibetan Buddhist perspective.
Is the book meant to be read sequentially, or do you jump around to the dates maybe in the book? If you have dates, I don't know if there's dates in there.
Yeah, there's dates. So we have a date for every single day of the year, and we've seen early readers. Some people do have some advanced copy, do one of two ways. Is you can either start January 1st and work through the book like that, even if you buy the book, let's say in June, or other people, if they really want to stick to the day of the year they're in, you can start and just pick it up on that day. It's still going to have the benefits. It's just each month covers a different theme. So the other thing you could do is you could pick, okay, I really want to work on understanding, impermanence, understanding change, and understanding death and that. So you would maybe start in January, where if you wanted to focus on meditation, we have a chapter for that in December. It really depends, but it can be either.
Is there an entry in your book or from a day that maybe has your favorite sort of personal advice or maybe story behind it?
Oh, there's a lot. A lot of the stories that we've made in there, come from personal experience or from, or from different books we've read. I mean, one of the things that I think about, there's an entry in the book that is called The Tip of the Iceberg, and it's February 5th, if I get the date right. And for that one, it makes you think about, all the different causes and conditions that go into someone's behaviors. For example, maybe you have a friend who he's a great friend, but maybe at times he's really stingy, right? He doesn't help you pay for the Uber. He doesn't buy you a drink. He doesn't maybe do the things that you'd wish him to do. And so you might think to yourself, oh, maybe this is just a bad person, or, that makes things really hard for our friendship. But we can't see the fact that maybe back when he was a kid, that his parents made him feel a sense of lack. Maybe he doesn't come from much money. And so it helps you kind of peel back the layers and kind of see beneath, if you go back to the analogy of the iceberg, that there's more to meet below the surface. And so with that kind of understanding, with every person we come across, whether it's a colleague, whether it's a neighbor, someone that might trigger us, we can understand, okay, they might trigger me, but I can only see a little bit of what this person is going through, when there's so much more that they've lived through, all these experiences that are creating whatever action they're doing towards me, or not even towards me, but, in my presence.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about your journey through your life. What was some of your influences growing up? What shaped you and eventually brought you to Buddhism?
Yeah, so I grew up in Massachusetts, not too far from Boston. And I guess I was raised Catholic, although not too strictly. So just didn't go to Sunday school every week, but, grew up there, got, education in the Northeast. And then I was in finance. I was doing sales for a number of years. And one of the things that started happening to me in my mid-20s, I started to burn out. I'm someone who's, very type A. I'm very driven. I want to, get the promotion. I want to make the sale. I want to, I want to write the book, right? Here we are doing a different type of that, but I'm like that type of person. And I found that it created a lot of anxiety in me, just the way I was kind of going about my career. And so back then I discovered meditation. A friend told me about it, that she was trying it. And so I gave it a try and I never stopped. And that was about 9 years ago. And I found that pretty quickly meditation was able to help ground me, help me to, calm my thoughts, see more clearly. And then that sort of progressed into more formal, what you can call Buddhist practices. And actually I met my wife at a bar. Her name's Pema. And she was from Nepal, so she actually grew up Buddhist from a traditional sense. Wow. And one of the things we had in common at the bar was that we both meditated and had interest in Buddhism. So you can imagine it was a good match. And so we've been together now for over 7.5 years and have grown our practice together a lot. When I say practice, I mean, it's meditation, but it's also living by Buddhist principles. Of course, there are ways to do like Buddhist prayers, just like you could do prayers in Christianity. So that's a big part of what we do. And then now with the book, we wanted to bring this to everyone else out in the world so they can understand the profound impact Buddhism can have, even if you're not Buddhist, right? You could be Christian, you could be Jewish, you could be anything and still appreciate the lessons in the Buddhist philosophy that we're teaching.
And then having a daily sort of advisory, I have something that sits off the screen, but I look at it every day. I have my Marcus Aurelius Meditations, and I've got a book that's called, it's from Ryan Holiday, The Daily Stoic Journal. And so having a daily sort of reminder, something to, tickle your brain and tickle file for your brain can really help. And one of the things I found was I started doing a thing in the mornings during the spring and summer when it's warm enough to go out. I'd go out and sit with my shirt off to start my circadian rhythms and get my vitamin D. And I'll sit in the sun. My dogs are playing in the yard, and I'll read something from Stoicism, like meditations or something like that. With your book, I could be reading, whatever the daily mantra is. And then, I would ponder over it. I would kind of read maybe a page or two, and then I would think about what I'd read. And you try and swim in it a little bit, instead of just trying to blast through a chapter. You read a few pages, and sometimes I just anonymously open the book and just kind of pick something and kind of run with it. But I found that starting my day in that mindfulness that you're talking about, and probably, with your book, one of those mantras for the day, really helps set my day on a good course. You wake up and you got emails coming at you, and you got phone calls and text messages, and everybody's, the world's on fire, we need your attention, and you're like, oh God, you got the news, and you got social media. And so I found that by not engaging in all that stuff first in the morning, waking up and getting my coffee, go outside, start my circadian rhythms, get my vitamin D from the sun, spend about 15, 20 minutes out there. Of course, I can play with my dogs. I can breathe in some fresh air. And, I found it was really meditative in a way, sort of relaxing. And it really set a concrete foundation for my day. And so people can do that with your book, right?
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why we built it. In fact, I'm very familiar with Ryan Holiday's work and also Stoicism. So I'm a big advocate of things you can learn from Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and Epictetus, the people that Ryan talks about in the Daily Stoic. And so in much the same way, our book is pulling from the Buddhist masters. So you might not know all their names, except, people know the Buddha, but they might not know the others, such as Shantideva, Nagarjuna, Milarepa. These are big names in the Buddhist space that anyone who knows Buddhism or practices it in the West, they'd know them. But a lot of people that don't, just like before Ryan's book, didn't know maybe who Epictetus was. It's the same thing. They have profound knowledge. And so by giving it in those daily chunks, and I found that book very helpful, The Daily Stoic, it's the same idea. It's how can we, start our day with a little bit more intention, a little bit more mindfulness, so that, if we learn, like we go back to the lesson I was talking about earlier, the tip of the iceberg, let's say that day someone triggers me and I start, maybe because I read that passage, I would react differently or try to understand the person versus overly react. So it's the same idea. And I think that daily read, we've also learned from our corporate clients. We do a lot of speaking events and training events for companies to try to help them with their employees with mindfulness and meditation. And one of the things we've learned is that people like to learn in small little bursts, and then they take the little burst and then they try to, implement it into their day. And that way it actually seeps in, it creates real change. Whereas if you read a whole book, in the course of a couple of weeks, and the next thing you know, it's a month later, you kind of forgot what you were trying to implement. So that's the other idea with the structure, and hopefully that can help people in that way.
The daily keep on course, because that's how a lot of people fail with New Year's resolutions, and I'm going to make change in my life. I'll do it tomorrow. Start tomorrow, and then tomorrow never comes. And having that daily schedule, and I think starting out the morning with peace really helped. I would do a thing where I wouldn't sit down with my computer, start looking at, people screaming at me on emails for attention. I would sit down and play some piano solo music from George Winston. That seems to be one of the things that brings me peace. And just try and start the day with some calmness. Just try and ease into the day. And then, eventually, climb onto the horse and run down the road with all the craziness that life brings you. And I just found that was a really healthy sort of foundation for me to start the day, just a real concrete place to start from. And I felt like I was more in command of my life too. I feel like when I do that and I start the day with a daily sort of mantra and I ponder it and I have some mindfulness about it and some peace, that it kind of gives me the day, even though, like I say, when you open your phone and, everyone's screaming at you, I need this answer on an email, yada, yada, then you feel like you're more in command. Like you don't feel like you're being whipshod by, trying to hold on to life, holding on to the back of a car going 100 miles an hour and you're just holding on for dear life. You kind of feel like you're more in control of your life. I like the empowerment I feel with it.
Yeah, and I think control is one thing, and then also I would say like maybe a feeling like things are a little bit lighter.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that we might if we don't take that space, like whether it's mindfulness or stoicism or we're meditating, then things can feel like overwhelming, right? You mentioned all these emails, all this mounting work, and it can kind of feel like we're on this race that never ends and it's too fast and we're holding on to that like bumper car, right? Or the bumper of the car. When you're able to reflect on, maybe it's something like impermanence. And I go back to that one because it's one of the most important Buddhist teachings. Like when you really everyone knows, like I mentioned earlier, that we're going to one day die, but a lot of people, I think myself included, most of the time, we don't internalize that, right? We don't live like we are impermanent. We live like we're going to be around forever. That reflects in maybe the decisions we make, how we treat other people, how we treat ourselves. So we can think about things with more intention in the morning, whether it's impermanence or compassion or generosity, whatever the theme might be. And these are all Buddhist concepts. It could be other things. Then it's going to help us to actually live that in our day. So when we're out there and these things are happening, we can have more control maybe over our reactions, but then also feel lighter that these things aren't as important as we might think they are, and kind of like get us away from this game we've created and see things more expansively. And maybe like that word lighter, I think is really helpful for people to think about.
Yeah. I mean, it gives you perspective too, I think. Like I say, you feel like you're more in control and empowered as opposed to, the world's just running on you, with all of its noise and busyness. And, it's just, it can be overwhelming. Like when I started really thinking about it and having a perspective, it changing my perspective in the morning to feel empowered, to feel like I'm more in control of my day. And then approaching it from I kind of feel like more I'm in the driver's seat when I sit down at my desk, turn on my computer and stuff. I feel like I'm the one, managing my life as opposed to, I'm just chasing everything, trying to put all these fires and whack-a-mole and all that stuff. And so I think it really makes a difference. Mindfulness is really everything. And then just practicing the ability to bring fight or flight mode down to calmness and peacefulness and some sort of resolute state where you feel like you're more empowered as opposed to being victimized. Because you can kind of feel that way some days where you're like, why me? What the fuck happened today? Why? I just feel like I'm under assault all day long,
Yeah. And, to your point about, bringing into that calmness, there's so much research out there these days about the benefits of meditation when it relates to things such as reducing stress, but also in terms of creating happiness. There was a big study done several years ago by Richard Davidson up in University of Wisconsin, and they put they were under a fMRI machine, put some Buddhist monks under there, and they found that some of the monks, or most of them, the ones that were experienced meditators who had been meditating for years and years and hours, well beyond anything I've ever done, had experienced, heightened levels of in different things they point to as happiness. So they actually are in like a more happy, a more stress-free state because of their meditation practice. So that's one of the things that we can think about is if we're not giving ourselves that space or maybe some form of meditation, and there's all those different types of forms out there, then we're not giving ourselves maybe a chance to experience happiness on the level that's really out there. So that might encourage people to maybe give it a try, or at least find their own version of meditation that can help them to get there.
There you go. Now, do you guys do coaching or counseling or advisors? I think we mentioned you do some work for corporations. Tell us what you guys offer on your website and your service area there.
Yeah, so my wife and I have been in business together for almost 7 years, and we're both professional speakers and corporate trainers that work with companies to do, whether it's a speaking event or a training for either their employees or for their clients. And a lot of our topics revolve around, mindfulness, how to use meditation to reduce stress or boost performance. We also do other work around emotional intelligence, emotional regulation. So that's before the book has come out, which is coming out next month. That's been our main thing for 7 years. And it's been a great way to learn about what people need out there in the real world. Because sometimes with Buddhist philosophy, it can kind of seem, that's something that only people that live, in Nepal can benefit from, or people that move out to the mountains and just kind of shut off their phone. But really what we're seeing in the corporate world, and even, just as I talk to people out in our neighborhood here in Brooklyn, is, no, mindfulness and meditation and Buddhist philosophy can work right here in the fast-paced world of New York City or wherever you are. And so that's what we're trying to do. And we've been doing that with clients for a while. And now hopefully the book can bring it to more of a broad scale.
This world doesn't get any easier and seems to be moving faster and more complex than ever before. And with AI and different things, it's getting crazy. As we go out, pitch people on how they can onboard with you, they can reach out, they can find out more about you, order the book, et cetera, et cetera. I think you have on your website, you have some special offerings you can get if you order the book through you directly.
Yeah, so on our website, thedailybuddhist.net, you'll see we have a bunch of pre-order exclusives. So there's a couple of tiers, but the main thing that we're offering for people that want to get the book ahead of time, it comes out May 27th, is a 15-day meditation course actually created by my wife that we usually package to either corporate clients or to individuals that buy it through our website. So if you get the book early, you can just register through our site and get the 15-day meditation course directly to your email. You get a couple other things you'll see on the site, but that's the main thing that people seem to be getting excited about right now. And also the book's going to be available everywhere in the US, all the major retailers, a lot of independent stores. And if you're abroad, so far, most of the English-speaking countries, I guess, like the UK, Australia, New Zealand, those are going to be having the book as well.
You can buy the book and learn to meditate. And I got to tell you, people, I am a big proponent of this. I've talked about it before on the shows. People have heard, that starting out with that morning mindfulness and helps your circadian rhythms. It helps your sleep patterns. Bringing calmness to your morning just brings you a foundation. And, what better way to start your morning than to sit with your family? For me, it's my dogs. To sit with good coffee. My case, a good espresso, and ponder the world and kind of, set yourself, make sure you get your legs under you, basically, for the day. That can really help. And, of course, reading passages of different mantras or Buddhist things, can remind you every day. And that's one of the things on how you create healthy habits, right? Is by having a daily sort of, working in it. You just, people always set those New Year's resolutions and then they forget about them. But having a daily sort of activity you can do to remind you and create that foundation, I think can make all the difference, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. That's what's been our finding. In fact, one of the programs we do for clients is called Micro Habits for Big Shifts. And that's what we've seen. If you can integrate a little thing each day, there's like the 1% better, then it's going to help your, if you're thinking about it from a success standpoint in your career. But I think from our standpoint, being a little bit happier, being a little bit lighter, being a little bit kinder, that's the things that through the book, you're going to be able to start to experience. Those little daily micro habits can lead to big shifts if you compound that over the course of the year. And that's what we've experienced. And hopefully people that pick up the book will experience too.
Make the world a better place. Thank you very much, sir, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris. It's been a great time.
Thank you. And thanks, Jonas, for tuning in. Order the book wherever fine books are sold. You can pre-order it now for out May 27th, 2025. It is called The Daily Buddhist, 366 Days of Wisdom for Happiness, Inner Freedom, and Mindful Living. Definitely recommend it. Thanks so much for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTok, and all those crazy places in it. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.